Welcome back. You're watching The Buck Stops Here, and it's time now to turn our focus on the big battle between Greenpeace and the government. Details of the affidavit submitted by the government are now available in the public domain. Among the arguments that the government has made to justify why it stopped Greenpeace activist Priya Pillai from travelling to the United Kingdom argue that her travel and her deposing before a foreign parliament would have been prejudicial to national interest. The affidavit goes on to argue that Pillai's testimony would have left India open to a sanction regime, and it goes on to say that these are instruments of control used to subdue India's increasing strength in global platforms. Is the government really acting in national interest, or is it effectively crushing dissent and crushing those who disagree with it and challenge its policies? Let's introduce our panel this evening. From the BJP, we're still with GVL Narsimha Rao, the national spokesperson of the party. From Bangalore today, we're joined by Samit Aich, the executive director of Greenpeace India. And also joining us is Siddharth Varadarajan, senior journalist, editor and columnist. I'll start with you, Mr. Rao. This sounds a bit absurd. It almost makes the government sound paranoid. Are you saying one individual, one NGO can alter India's fortunes and fate on the global stage?
No, I think the reference should not be seen to be only to one individual or one organization, but this has been used as an instrument of foreign policy by many countries like the US, UK and European Union. I think that's what the affidavit talks about, and the intelligence report that was in public domain in the month of June, which was actually commissioned by the previous regime, that also brought to light a lot of NGOs working in specific sectors, which are sunrise sectors for the economy, where the involvement of the activism and foreign funded activism. The real problem is a huge doubts arise also because of the nature of funding.
The court did not accept your argument. The court in fact ordered the government to unfreeze the accounts of Greenpeace. So this paranoia about foreign funding on the one hand, but opening up India to foreign investment in all other areas, isn't there a contradiction?
No, I think in the case of foreign direct investment, people are coming with a specific purpose. Here, the so-called foreign funding to the NGOs, I think this is an absurd argument put forward by many NGOs, that you also have to stop FDI if foreign donations are not acceptable. These foreign donations, a lot of them come with a specific motive, and the motive is to hurt India's economic interests in certain sectors. This is an apprehension that was mentioned in the IB report.
Stay with us, Mr. Rao. Stay with us, Mr. Rao. Let me get a response from Samit now and Siddharth. Samit, I'll start with you. One of the questions that's being asked is, criticize the government all you want, but why do you need to go and depose before another country's parliament? That is something that will leave a lot of Indians uncomfortable. How do you respond to that specific charge? Because that's what's been brought up in the government affidavit as well.
Well, actually, Barkha, I'm not actually quite surprised at what Mr. Narsimha Rao is saying on behalf of the government. But I'll come back to that later. I think more important is to understand this level of paranoia the government is currently facing and targeting Greenpeace in India. Priya Pillai was invited as a part of the APPG, the All-Party Parliamentary Group in the British House of Commons, because she has been campaigning in the forests of Mahan in a coal mine, which has been in the interest of SR Energy. And by the way, you have to keep in mind some technical details. SR Energy is headquartered in Mauritius. It is listed in the London Stock Exchange. It is owned by two NRIs, and nothing about them seems to be Indian. And for some strange reason, they continue to insinuate Greenpeace and say that Greenpeace is foreign funded. I fail to understand that how with this combination of Mauritius, London and NRIs, can Greenpeace India be foreign and SR be construed as being an Indian company?
Okay, Samit, before I take that back to Mr. GVL Rao, Siddharth, what sort of questions is this collision between the government and the Greenpeace really throwing up? This isn't just about one NGO. Now, there are many people who may not necessarily agree with Greenpeace's extreme methods or extreme positions, but the fact that the government is actually responding in court and saying, no, this one person traveling abroad could hurt our national interests, and that anyone who deposes before a foreign parliament is prejudicial to national interests. Do you think the government has any point when it says, why depose before another country's parliament?
You see, the fact of the matter is that whether somebody goes there physically to depose, as Priya Pillai was planning to do before she was stopped, or whether she deposes via Skype, which is evidently what she did, or if the British parliamentary delegation picks up an Indian newspaper which carries an article by her and cites that as a source in a footnote for a report that they come up with, all of these are completely interchangeable. So, the government is tilting at windmills. The fact of the matter is that India is a democratic society, and Indians are free to criticize their government and to criticize government policies and to do so in fairly harsh and
but Siddharth, do they need to take that criticism outside India? I think the question the BJP is asking is, you need to take that criticism to another country's parliament.
Barkha, your program can be watched in London. So tomorrow, if the Home Ministry were to say that featuring Mr. Aich on your program and making it available to British MPs in London endangers, where does this whole drama end? And what worries me about the affidavit is not just its irrationality, but the fact that the government is pushing it so aggressively, despite the fact that in the last hearing, the High Court judge who was hearing the matter appeared to be not very convinced by the way in which the government was presenting its arguments. So I think it looks like the MHA, the Government of India, will take this matter all the way to the Supreme Court. They seem to be wedded to this idea that they have the right to stop anybody from airing views. And today it's about foreign travel. Tomorrow it will be about views. Make no mistake about it.
Now, GVL Narsimha Rao, please respond to that. That in a way, what the position you're taking. One minute. Let me ask my question. Is actually defying technology. Technology has outpaced your politics. I think that's what both Siddharth and Samit are saying. They may not agree with your politics, but the technology has outpaced it anyway. Priya Pillai Skyped the British parliamentary delegation that she was supposed to physically meet. This program is broadcasting, as Siddharth said, in London tonight.
Yeah, I think nobody needs to really validate that we have the kind of personal freedom and liberty that possibly no other country can better. The fact that we are discussing it repeatedly on television, does it not mean that everyone enjoys the freedom? And even the Greenpeace people going around making all statements against government, they're allowed to do it. There is no bar on anything. But when it becomes prejudicial to national interest, I think government has a right, government has a duty to intervene. I think we have seen how activists like even Tista Sitalwad, under the garb of fighting for the rights of certainly this is an extension of that.
Case is also seen to be
an
a collision of political ideologies. Okay, Siddharth, you had a question for GVL Rao, and then I'll come to Samit. Siddharth, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Rao, why is Priya Pillai going to London more prejudicial to India's national interest than her speaking to those MPs via Skype or via a newspaper article or via Barkha's program? If you're saying that her giving information directly to the British MPs is prejudicial, then surely the manner and form in which that information is given should be quite irrelevant from your point of view. So why are you objecting to just one form and not the others?
No, I think first of all, I'm not objecting to anybody going anywhere, but the issue is, I think the document affidavit itself clearly mentions, I think the whole so-called disposition or it gets a lot of the testimony, gets a lot of weight when these people go in person and depose before them. And secondly, I think this also through this episode, I think there has been a lot of public awareness that has got generated, but if what has been done is not approved by the court, and courts are there to really set aside any government decision.
Mr. Rao, I have one last question for you before we let you go, because I know you have to go. My last question for you is one Priya Pillai so threatening to the might of the government of India? I have never seen a government go after one individual and one group in this manner. Surely India is large enough to accommodate a diversity of opinions and ideologies.
No, it is not one Priya Pillai who is being targeted here. I think there is nobody who is being targeted. This is symptomatic of many organizations receiving foreign funding and working to the detriment of India's interest. It's a message to that group as a whole. It's not an individual who is being targeted.
One point. Barkha, Mr.
Okay,
Rao,
Samit's wanting to say
Mr.
something
Rao
to you.
has been
Samit,
talking about
Samit,
foreign funding. Yeah, Mr. Rao has been talking about national interest. I'd like to question who only decides national interest. It is only the government, or is it also affected tribals and affected people in the communities who also have a right to this debate? Unfortunately, it seems
okay,
that
GV, a quick response to that. I'll come back to you, Samit. GV, a quick response.
Is being defined only by the government.
Okay, Mr. Rao, quick response.
Government is not all that powerful as you think. There are any actions of the government are subject to scrutiny by the courts, and there is a thriving and independent media in this country where you are able to articulate your concerns, and just for fighting for the rights of tribals. If you continue to fight against the economic growth of the country, I think government will continue to express its own concerns.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Rao. Let me put these questions to Samit now. Samit, one of the criticisms that was raised about Greenpeace was that you were accused in that Intelligence Bureau report of funding an Aam Aadmi Party candidate from the very area where you were protesting. So one, it was seen as getting involved in politics. Two, it was seen as a kind of conflict of interest. So how do you respond to that you conflated your political support with a cause that you were supporting?
Barkha, the IB report is the biggest joke of our lifetime, and at least the biggest joke of 2014. The government has got all the facts wrong in the IB report. A classic example of how it got the facts wrong was when the Delhi High Court passed a judgment which you just referred to about the fact that just because Greenpeace India has an opinion which is different from the government's doesn't make it anti-national. In fact, the court has very clearly told in its verdict about the government, which has said that the government has acted against Greenpeace in an arbitrary manner, in an unconstitutional manner, and in an illegal manner.
No, but are you denying this accusation?
I think that's a very
in the
strong
IB
statement.
Report?
I think it's a very strong
set the
statement.
record straight on. But Samit, are you denying that you funded the candidate in Mahan where you're also protesting against SR? I think that's one of the allegations you do have to come, clarify. Are you denying that allegation, Samit?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question? I can't hear you properly, Barkha. Could you just repeat it slowly, please?
Are you denying the allegation that you funded a candidate in the very area where you're protesting against SR?
Absolutely.
That's the charge in the
Absolutely.
IB report.
I would like to challenge anyone who comes and gives us proof for that. This is one of the stories that has been planted in the IB, and that has been challenged. We are going to challenge it, and it's absolutely false and wrong. It's a lie.
Okay.
May I say it? It's a lie.
Okay, Siddharth, last words to you. What do you make of this, as you said, this very aggressive posture that's taken by the government? Is it just somebody down the ranks among the law officers who's arguing in court? Because when initially Priya Pillai was stopped, all the ministries disowned any responsibility or knowledge as to why she was stopped.
No, it's very clear from this affidavit and the very aggressive language used that the government has taken a conscious decision to pursue this matter. So even if they weren't involved, we don't know how high the decision making went to stop Priya Pillai, but now that she's been stopped, I think it's clear that the government intends to fully stand by this absurd decision. And the logic, as I said, it's a slippery slope. Today, the government is citing the fact that activists are free to go to court and free to write in papers, and they don't have to go abroad to testify. But those same court documents and those same articles can and will be used by foreign governments if they so desire. So does that mean that those activities also will then come under a microscope? So I think, this kind of logic, the government of India needs to be more confident about where India stands in the world. If there is a threat of sanctions, you fight that diplomatically. You don't fight that by clamping down on the democratic rights of people.
Okay, we leave it there. Siddharth Vardharaj and Samit Narsimha Rao, thank you so much for joining us on the Buck Stops here. Thanks very much. This is a story we'll continue to follow.